must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
Today in Africa, we see a lot of uprisings, planning for uprisings, plotting for uprisings in several African countries. The events on the African continent, therefore, as predicted much earlier myself, in 2017, I said, before 2020, 13 African countries would have undergone either soft regime change, soft coups, or violent regime change through uprising, which now seem to be real. The signs that and symbols that we see are the real symbols and the signs that more is to come against African governments. What do we do then? There is a new method of changing governments strategically placed in the United States of America by George Soros. George Soros funds civil societies, civil disobedience, civil violence in Africa. It is upon you Africans and African heads of state, wherever you were, as you plan to convene next month or before the end of this month in Addis Ababa, to understand the magnitude of this regime change strategy. Many wars are taking place, internal strife, conflicts like the one in Cameroon, Ambazonian, like the one in Biafra, Boko Haram, and then in Biafra, like the one in Libya. But the theme is the same. Regime change, uprising. Is it a matter of taking over our resources? You see, the war in Congo has erupted again. Unknown militias have arrived in Congo, restarted the war, and it is going on. All these culminate to one thing. Are we ready to be independent? As I said last week, this week, are people in Africa ready to accept the results of elections? Elections everywhere in Africa are bringing the chaos we see. The people of Africa seem to be divided after elections or before elections. Is Africa ready for elections? Do we need elections in Africa? If so, are we tolerant enough to accept results? Are we ready? Which method can we use in Africa to make sure that there is hope for the countries and there is hope and the future of Africa is guaranteed? Viewers, the High Court in Malawi today or yesterday was hearing a case when the president had already been sworn in. If the president of Malawi has been sworn in, then the High Court is hearing the case. Is that not a disaster, an accident in waiting? Whether this will make us have a peaceful Africa remains to be seen. And may God help us to build a better Africa. Thank you very much.
Our ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, laid out a clear agenda for reform, but despite reported and repeated warnings, no action at all was taken. So the United States took the only responsible course. We withdrew from the Human Rights Council, and we will not return until real reform is enacted. For similar reasons, the United States will provide no support in recognition to the International Criminal Court. As far as America is concerned, the ICC has no jurisdiction, no legitimacy, and no authority. The ICC claims near universal jurisdiction over the citizens of every country, violating all principles of justice, fairness, and due process. We will never surrender America's sovereignty to an unelected, unaccountable global bureaucracy.
Trump's decision to come out of ICC, which is International Criminal Court, sends a lot of signals and a lot of happiness to some of us. From time of the inception of ICC, David Matanga and others, I want to thank David Hoyle, my professor, Professor Hoyle in London. Thank you very much for mentoring me to stand firm to discuss the African question on the ICC. It is very important, therefore, for the people of Africa to understand that while you rejoice, while you want to hate Trump, Trump has made it very clear that globalization is not part of his agenda.
America is governed by Americans. We reject the ideology of globalism, and we embrace the doctrine of patriotism. Around the world, responsible nations must defend against threats to sovereignty, not just from global governments, but also from other new forms of coercion and domination. In America, we believe strongly in energy security for ourselves and for our allies.
Today, as we speak, this nation cannot be the same. This nation is paralyzed. This nation needs serious redemption, needs the building of bridges. As a result of the ICC, the anger that was flowing from one end to the other created a problem that we see here, but people don't want to admit. People wait in Africa. Trump is correct. Let's wake up. Let's have a rebirth that delivers to hope so that our people don't perish in the Mediterranean Sea. A rebirth that will bring about peaceful resolution of conflicts, like the conflicts that occur in South Sudan, between Riek Machar and Salva Kiir. These conflicts don't give us any hope. These conflicts don't give us anything that is yearned for. These conflicts are a pity to Africa. We are allowed into the ICC in 1998 by Kofi Annan. America rejected ICC, stood firm and said, we can give you the money, but we shall not ratify for you because we have institutions. We have failed our own judiciary systems, but we want to be judged by another judiciary system which has no jury, it has no evidence, it has no separation of powers between the chief prosecutor and the investigative arm, and then with the prosecuting arm. That's the Africa we have.
The International Court of Justice is a court that was created to solve problems of disputes of any nature. But this court was created on the basis that times could change and the constitutionalism and the mandate could also change. The International Court of Justice has never changed. In this court, there is no chamber for appeal. There is no chamber for amicus curiae, for people to bring in their opinions in terms of individuals or organizations that are hurt in one way or the other, or good opinions that could shape the outcome of the findings or the cases filed there. This court, therefore, remains one of the most obnoxious, one of the most opaque institutions whose findings we don't know who decides and how the decisions are taken, how stakeholders are supposed to recourse to a remedy, where to get a remedy, we don't know. A court has no chambers, no lower chamber, no upper chamber for appeal. It has itself as a final court of jurisdiction around the world. Are the people of the world going to say, is Somalia and Kenya going into this court, seeing the obstacles that they will cause for the region? Those are the questions I ask. And I want my viewers and those listening to this tape to understand that Africa needs to solve the problem in an African way. There is no other way to solve the problem of Somalia and Kenya amicably than sitting on a table to have a discussion, find ways of resolving the conflict that has brought us to not talking terms. But Somalia seems to be pushed by external darker forces to go and dismember the unity that we have in the Great Lakes region and the Horn of Africa. ICJ as a court is an institution that is very opaque, very dark in its sense of darkness, that you don't know how decisions are made. There is no counter checks and balances in the decision making. I therefore urge Somalia and Kenya not to attend this court. I urge Somalia and Kenya to avoid this court for the sake of peace in the Indian Ocean. I also have called upon the countries that are supporting Somalia to take this case, to withdraw their support for the sake of security, because we have only one common enemy. The enemy are the terrorists killing the innocent Somalis who need our help to be liberated from these fighters who have come and gathered in the great once country, or the PAL, one of the Pan-African countries in Africa. Thank you very much, viewers. That is my message to the world. Let's spread it. The International Court of Justice is opaque. It doesn't have appeal chamber. It doesn't have preparation chamber. It doesn't have any. Once the decision is made, the decision is final. Do we need that? Do we call that democratic? I leave it to you. Thank you.
very good morning to you, and thank you for joining us. It is another edition of Good Morning Africa show, and of course it is the 1st of October 2019, and a lot seems to be happening on this day. Of course, this month, by the end of this month, 31st of this month, that Brexit is supposed to have, will be exiting, the European Union, that is British, and so we are waiting to see how that will play out. So far, they've not found a deal yet. They've not settled on a deal. So, Mr. Boris Johnson is trying to work on a deal that will make sure there's no hard borders when they exit European Union. So they have a deadline 31st of this month, which will also be Halloween. So I hope it's not going to be another Halloween prank for the British people. Thank you so much. Of course, we have so much in store for you. My name is Miriam Agutu, and I'm glad that you joined us this morning. I can see you're watching us from across the globe, and we have a lot in store for you. As I said there, we have some news from Biafra, and yesterday a very popular journalist, Chido Omuma, was arrested in Algeria after he came back from, he had made an abroad trip, and he was wearing a t-shirt that seemed to support Biafra. I'll get you the details of that. And also a petition against the re-election of Jubaland State President Sheikh Ahmed, has hit a snag. And in South Africa, a team of special envoys from South Africa who were sent across the continent to try to do, damage control over the recent xenophobic attacks of other African nationalities in South Africa. I'll let you know how that is working out there. And also Somalia, there was an attack on U.S. military base there. And of course, in Morocco, a journalist has been sentenced to a year in prison for premarital sex and, of course, having an abortion. I'll bring you in details there. And in Tanzania, about 467 people who were facing some economic sabotage crimes are now seeking for forgiveness. I'll come in with the details. And of course, the key leaders in the Anglophone separatist movement, Cameroon, boycotted the first day of the national dialogue that started yesterday that had been called for by Cameroon's President, Mr. Paul Biya. That also, of course, forms our topical discussion of the day. And we will see the national dialogues, will it solve the crisis in Ambazonian? So stay tuned at the top of the hour. We will be looking at that towards the end of the show. And also in Uganda, Ugandan authorities have now banned anybody from wearing the red berets, which had become a symbol for the opposition, especially led by Mr. Bobi Wine. And now the government has said this is part of the Ugandan Defense Forces army uniform, so nobody will be expected to be wearing these red berets anymore. I don't know how that move will augur, of course, with Bobby Wine and his supporters. And in Sudan, of course, the Prime Minister met with French President Emmanuel Macron. I'll be giving you the details of that, so stay tuned. I have a lot in store for you. And but first, I would like us just to go through very, very quickly what is making headlines this morning in the Kenyan newspapers. And we see, will BBI deliver? Like I said, in October, we have a lot in store. And of course, the talks of the national dialogue in Cameroon started yesterday. Today it is in its second day, but also in Kenya here it is the deadline, and we're expecting now the BBI report to be delivered. And when I look at the Standard, of course, the front page, it says, will BBI deliver Uhuru and Raila handshake deal? And when President Uhuru Kenyatta reached out to ODM leader Raila Odinga in March 2018, they promised it was not about politics but unity, progress and development. That is in page 7. Let me just perhaps quickly look at that, and then we see what the paper is saying. And it says a task force is holed up in a secret hideout believed to be either in Nairobi or Kajiado County. And the Building Bridges Initiative team yesterday went on a retreat to prepare a report that it will present to President Uhuru Kenyatta. That the team constituted after the March 9th, 2018 handshake between Uhuru and opposition leader Raila Odinga has promised recommendations that will foster unity. Already, leading politicians are divided on proposal that the team should recommend a referendum as a cure for all the country's social wars and, of course, negative ethnicity, political antagonism, corruption, among others, are things that the BBI team seeks to highlight on. So, of course, here, the team was constituted, of course, last year. It was a result of a truce between the two leaders. And, of course, the team is supposed to table its report by October 24th. So, this is a very big, very important for Kenyans. So, we're waiting for this. They have been, the team was tasked going through around the country and seeking for Kenyans' opinions from different sectors, different organizations, politicians, religious leaders, and just trying to see, of course, ways in which the perennial problem of fighting comes every 5 years in an electioneering period. So they're trying to see which way out, what really is the problem. So we're just hoping that the opinions that was given there will help the country move forward. But of course, this is something that was not readily accepted by a section of politicians in this country, and it has been seen as a method of the former Prime Minister ascending into power through the back door, as some politicians would like to call it. So let's just wait. So we're waiting for the report. I'm eagerly waiting for it. October 24th, there is the deadline, and already leaders have expressed different expectations, with some saying it should recommend a referendum to change the system of the government, and others saying a plebiscite is not necessary. So let's see how that will work out for Kenyans. But of course, this is something that Kenyans are keen in knowing what's really happening. And of course, end of old note, but questions remain. So yesterday was the last time we were going to use the 1,000 Kenya shillings. That is our biggest, currency here. So yesterday, the government introduced a new money, new currencies about 4 months ago in a bid to try to end corruption. And a lot of people had stolen money and stashed in their houses, and they were not banking it, and money laundering and fake money. So it was just, it was too much. So the government decided, you know what, we're going to print new currencies, which of course was not well received by a section of population in this country. But it went ahead anyway. And so yesterday was the last time the 1,000 shillings note was going to, anyone who had it was to take it to the bank and exchange it with a new one. And now Central Bank of Kenya, under pressure, tell an eager nation whether it recovered all 217 million pieces of old 1,000 shillings Kenyans notes and netted a few crooks in the 4-month demonetization exercise. So Kenyans are waiting for this. If at all the target, they met the target to have all the old money brought back, and also if at all anybody that they were hoping that some people who had acquired a huge amount of money illegally will take this opportunity to go and bank it, and then from that they would arrest them, and perhaps if they're not able to explain where they got that money, But did that happen? So we are waiting to hear. And it says that the Central Bank of Kenya will be under pressure to tell an eager nation whether it recovered all of the 217 million pieces of the old 1,000 shillings notes and netted a few crooks in the 4-month demonetization exercise. This notwithstanding Kenyans bade farewell to the elephant-embossed currency, which some proudly said had served them well in the last 25 years, but which quickly turned into a badge of dishonor to others. So we are waiting for that report by the Central Bank of Kenya there. Also, very sad story there. Something happened over the weekend where a mother and her daughter fell. The car, I think, lost control and fell off a ferry on Sunday evening. And security labs to blame for ferry deaths. That's what the Standard is saying on the front page. Then it says relatives and friends wait at the Likoni Channel for retrieval of bodies of Mariam Kigenda and her 4-year-old daughter Amanda, who drowned in the shark-infested part of Indian Ocean after their car fell off the MV Harambee ferry on Sunday evening. And it is unfortunate until, I think, yesterday, even this morning. I don't know if there are reports if their bodies have been retrieved yet. I'm yet to hear about that, but since Sunday, their bodies have not been retrieved. So that is ridiculous. I think Kenyan Navy are trained. I want to believe they have enough training, and by now we should be having these bodies at least. They drowned on Sunday evening. Today is Tuesday. Can you imagine what the family is going through? They've already lost their loved ones, and then you hear that part of the Indian Ocean is shark infested, and then your loved ones they drowned on Sunday, and on Tuesday their bodies have not been retrieved. That is just double agony for the family, I can imagine. And we're just passing our condolences to the family of the bereaved family. All right, so that is on the Standard newspapers front pages. And I see here 9-point agenda for Uhuru Raila Pact that I think was supposed to be addressed on the BBI. That is ethnic antagonism, a lack of national ethos. That's the second one. The third, inclusivity. Fourth, devolution. And fifth, divisive elections. Sixth, security. 7, corruption. 8, shared prosperity. And 9, responsibility. So let's see if this BBI will be able to address those very important key points here for that will help Kenya move forward. Or I don't know how a part of the population in the country will receive that. And on the Star newspaper, how Uhuru wants members of parliament to increase your debt burden. President seeks to amend the Finance Management Act to raise the government's borrowing limit. And that is in page 4 and 5. And this, the paper says President Uhuru Kenyatta's Jubilee administration plans to plunge you deeper into debt and in pushing a radical law change allowing you to borrow as much as 3 trillion Kenya shillings more. Acting Treasury Cabinet Secretary Uhuru Yatan has proposed amendments to Parliament that, if approved, would give Jubilee a blank check to borrow as much as 9 trillion Kenya shillings. The country's debt stands at 5.8 trillion Kenya shillings. So that is a story you can find on page 4 and 5 of the Star newspaper. And still on headlines there on the Star newspapers, the front page, it says Raila allies warn Ruto of chaos for attacks on ex-Prime Minister. It's ridiculous. And a tragedy state moves pupils and teachers. So remember last week there's a school, last Monday, an accident happened in a school which, crumbled, and 8 pupils there lost their lives. So now the government has been making efforts to make sure that the rest of the pupils are moved to other neighboring, schools there. But yesterday, as I was watching the evening news, parents were really complaining and saying they're nearby. A government school is many kilometers away that will force you to be taking your child, especially if they're still very young. So you have to walk your child to school and pick them up, and the parents don't have the luxury all the time to do that because this location where this accident happened is in a sort of a poor neighborhood. So the parents are busy going out to hustle on how to take care of their kids. They really don't have time to walk many miles away to take their kids to school and then later on have to go pick them. So this school was very convenient in terms of where it was located. That's why it had a huge number of pupils there. Unfortunately, it collapsed. over a week ago, on Monday last week, and so now the government is trying to, come in ways and, get them, the kids, making sure they go to other schools, but the parents are not quite pleased with that move there. So let's see how that will work out. And also, Matiang'i blames judiciary for slow war on drugs. The Kasha brothers would still be walking free on our streets and recruiting more Kenyans into their business if Americans had not charged them. Interior CS Fred Matiang'i has said Baktash and Ibrahim Makasha have been convicted of drug trafficking charges in the United States courts, and I'm sure even Dr. Matanga will agree with this, and a lot of other Kenyans would agree with this. And so that is that on the Star newspaper. I'm just looking at what's making headlines today in Kenya before we get into what is making headlines across Africa, and I have a lot of news for you from across Africa, so just keep it here. And on the Daily Nation, puzzle of missing 5.6 billion Kenya shillings at NSSF again. Now, thousands of Kenyans looking forward to receiving their retirement benefits could be in for a rude shock after it emerged that the fund failed in its legal mandate of ensuring employers deduct money from workers and remit it on time. Oh my goodness, this sounds like another scandal. And if you want to know more about that story, please go on the Daily Nation page 4. And still on the front page is there, the horror as helpless mother and child plunge into Likoni abyss of death. And Mrs. Kigenda cried out for help as her vehicle began to reverse but got none. Everything that could possibly go wrong did, and the prow that should have stopped the car was defective with its flap on the water, and there was no emergency service in the site. And when I was reading this story, apparently, if you're driving, and I've used that channel before, but not in a car, towards the other side of Likoni and back to the mainland Mombasa, but it's quite scary, of course, I have a water phobia, so that would explain it. But still, I hear that you're supposed, if you go with a car, you're supposed to come out of it until the ferry reaches the other side, and then you enter and you drive off your car. But, a lot of drivers don't do that. They enter with their cars and they just stay there until the ferry reaches the other side. So that is very dangerous. So because this was happening, if she had moved outside of the car, the car would have plunged by itself in the ocean. But unfortunately, she was there, and while she was crying for help, she couldn't receive any help, and the part of the ferry back there that was supposed to be, acting as, to try to stop the car was defective, so it was flapping in the ocean. I tell you, so many Kenyans depend on that. It's a government service there, and it's for free. So to connect you from Mombasa, the mainland, to Likoni there, and other parts on the coastal region, but mainly the Likoni channel there. And it serves a huge population, and sometimes these ferries are so defective, others break down, and many Kenyans' lives are put at risk there. So I think it's time the government really did something, and Kenya Navy, I think this time they've really, I don't know, that is not a good move for them. This accident happened on Sunday, and until today, the bodies have not been retrieved. That is, what does that say about the Kenyan Navy there? I mean, what kind of training do they receive? Are they up to the task of actually helping us in our waters and taking care of our waters? And, they're supposed to be present at that place, I would believe, and divers and things like that. In case of an accident, there's supposed to be people who are there to help. So it's a very sad situation there, really quite sad. So that is, and also police question city socialite in connection with Cohen's killing. Nancy Kigwe Whiteston, who comes from a prominent Kiambu family, quizzed at the DCI over the death of a Dutch business person. So if you want to get the details of that, go to page 8 of the Daily Nation. So that is just a recap on what is making headlines across Kenya. The major Kenya newspapers, that is the Standard newspaper, Daily Nation, and the Star. So right now, I'd like for us to go straight into Africa news this morning. And of course, we start with Cameroon. And key leaders of the Anglophone separatist movement in Cameroon boycotted the first day of a national dialogue that government hopes will resolve the decades-old conflict in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. Nearly 3,000 people have died and 500,000 fled their homes since fighting broke out in 2017 between the army and insurgents who want independence for Cameroon's two English-speaking provinces. And we go to Uganda, where authorities in Uganda announced on Monday that the red beret and tunic would henceforth be designated as official military clothing, essentially banning the uniform of opposition leader Bobi Wine and his supporters. The pop star turned leading opposition figure who has announced he's running for president against longtime serving President Yoweri Museveni in 2021 has made the red beret his signature, calling it a symbol of resistance. Bobi Wine, whose real name is Robert Changulanyi, did not comment on the new rules as he is out of the country. However, a leading figure in his People Power movement, which has yet to register as a political party, say they will not stop wearing it. And we go to Sudan, where Sudan's Prime Minister has met a senior Darfur rebel leader living in France in talks facilitated by President Emmanuel Macron. Abdallah Hamdok said that his meeting with rebel leader Abdel Wahid El Nur, which he had expected to last 30 minutes, went on for nearly 3 hours and involved very profound exchanges. Darfur is a region in the west of Sudan which has been ravaged by conflict since 2003. When rebel groups took up arms against former President Omar al-Bashir, and Mr. Nur is the leader of the Sudan Liberation Movement, SLMAW. And still in Sudan, and France will host a conference with Sudan's international creditors to help Khartoum address debt issues as soon as the United States removes the country from its state-sponsored terrorism list, French President Emmanuel Macron said on Monday. In efforts to stabilize the country and repair an economy battered by years of U.S. sanctions and government mismanagement during Omar al-Bashir's 30-year rule, Sudanese transition government, led by Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok, is holding talks with Washington to see Sudan withdrawn from the list of countries sponsoring terrorism. And we go to South Africa, where a team of special envoy from South Africa who was sent across the continent following recent xenophobic attacks has presented President Cyril Ramaphosa with a preliminary report. The envoys visited countries including Algeria, Ghana, Senegal, Tanzania, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Zambia to reassure people there that South Africa was committed to Pan-Africa unity. President Ramaphosa's spokesperson, Kusele Diko, said the envoys relayed South Africans' apologies and commitment to working together. And in Somalia, the U.S. has condemned an attack at a military base outside Somalia's capital, Mogadishu, and praised the army for acting swiftly to repel it. The base is used by American forces to train Somali soldiers. The Al-Qaeda-linked militant group Al-Shabaab claimed responsibility for the early morning attack. The Somali army says it killed Al-Shabaab fighters who attacked the military base located about 100 kilometers northwest of Mogadishu. The militants detonated a car bomb before a gun battle ensued at the Balidogle Air Base. A U.S. ambassador to Somalia, Donald Yamamoto, said the Somali army did not suffer any casualties. And in Morocco, a Moroccan journalist has been sentenced to a year for premarital sex and having an abortion in a case activists say it's a part of a crackdown on critical reporters. Hajar Raisuni was arrested with her fiancé as they left a gynecologist clinic in the capital Rabat in August. The 28-year-old denied the charges, saying she had sought treatment for internal bleeding. Ms. Raisuni works for an independent newspaper critical of the authorities. A journalist at the Akbar Al-Yusum Daily, she denounced the case against her as a political trial, saying she had been questioned by police about her family and her writing. And in Tanzania, a total of 467 people accused of economic sabotage crimes in Tanzania have written to the country's chief prosecutor to apply for an amnesty introduced by President John Magufuli. Last week, President Magufuli advised the country's Director of Public Prosecution, DPP, Biswalo Mganga, to open his doors to all economic crime suspects who are ready to confess and return the funds they are alleged to have illegally accumulated in exchange to their freedom. Economic crimes, most notably notably money laundering, are not available in Tanzania. All 467 accused are in detention, some for more than 3 years. I think that is something Kenya could borrow. And we'll talk about it. Let me just finish this. And in Jubaland, the petition against the re-election of Jubaland State President Sheikh Ahmed Islam Madobe has hit a snag due to the absence of judicial system. A petitioner, Abdallah Ahmed Ibrahim, who was barred from contesting for president, is considering moving to the East African Court of Justice. He told the East African that he submitted his petition to the regional court because courts in Somalia lack the capacity to handle the case. And in Biafra, and two pan-Igbo groups have disagreed with the President General of Ohanaeze Gimbo, Chief Ninia Nodo, and that the stillborn Republic of Biafra was defeated. Nodo was said to have stated, as the just concluded Dr. Michael Okara Leadership and Good Governance lecture at Omoahia in Abia State, that Biafra was defeated after the civil war. The disagreeing groups, Igbo People's Congress and Igbo's Aborigines, however, argued that the war ended on a no victor, no vanquished note. Spokesperson for the groups OBC, Kechide, and OK Colbert noted that both sides of the war got tired and weak of the battle and each for its end. And still on Biafra, and Chido Onuma, a Nigerian journalist and rights activist, says he was arrested by operatives of the Department of State Services for wearing a t-shirt with the inscription, "We are all Biafrans." Onuma was arrested at the Nnamdi Azikiwe Airport in Abuja on Sunday, September 29th, and detained for 5 hours by the secret police. While speaking on his ordeal, Onuma said the agency described the inscription on his t-shirt as capable of causing disaffection in the country. And that is the latest from the continent this morning. Good morning. I am Miriam Agutu. So you just heard some of this news making headlines across Africa. And of course, our top of the hour, we'll be looking at the national dialogue. Towards the end of the show, half an hour before we end the show, we'll be looking at national dialogue. Will it solve the Ambazonian crisis? The national dialogue that was called upon by President Paul Biya there in Cameroon, that started yesterday. And I'll bring you the history of that war and where we are today and what necessitated to the situation and conditions that the government of Cameroon and the Anglophones found themselves today. So I'll not even look at it, the Cameroon story now. We'll look at it much later, comprehensively. So let's start with Uganda. Of course, you heard in Biafra what is happening there. One of leading, journalists there, Chido Omuna, he is a respected Nigerian journalist and also a rights activist. And he had traveled from abroad and he wore a T-shirt but I don't know if the production house can find that T-shirt that bore the inscriptions of "We are all Biafrans." I think the message that this journalist was trying to send out was, you know what is going on in Biafra? And of course, what Biafrans want is a better life, which they have been denied, better services, which they have been denied, the quality of the health system to be improved have been denied. And so all these questions that they have been raising over the years have caused them now to want to, have their own country. And so what this journalist was trying to express is the suffering that is happening in Biafra. I think all as human beings, we can suffer that. And if another part of humanity is suffering, then we all should suffer. So he was trying to drive that message. And of course, it was not taken very kindly with the Nigerian, authorities. So they arrested him when he had alighted from the airport there at Nnamdi Azikiwe Airport in Abuja on Sunday. And so he was detained for 5 hours, being questioned over a T-shirt. Over a T-shirt. And he's right on this one, because we are all Biafrans. We are all humans. And if one part of humanity is suffering, if you turn on your television and you see the war going on in Yemen and you see how those children are suffering, or that time in Aleppo, in Syria, how those kids are suffering. And I remember vividly this image of a child who was sitting behind an ambulance. I think he was 3 or 4 years old. and you could see his bloody face, and you're wondering, what is the world coming to? So as a human being, you look at things like that, and it touches you, because when another human being is suffering, unless you really have a heart of I don't know what, it will touch you, and it will cause you to want to do something and find a solution to what is it that can probably end and possibly end the suffering of people across the world. Or if you feel that some people are being like what is happening in Biafra, and years of oppression by the government. Even if you're not coming part of the Igbo, I'm sure even Nigerians from the other side of Nigeria, they're feeling, no, this is not right. So this journalist was trying to express like that, we are all Biafrans, in the sense that when these people are suffering, it is just from a humanity ground. We are all suffering, and we should be able to recognize that and not be blinded because we think they're different from us. Their thinking is different from us, their ideology, whatever. At the base of it all, the core of humanity, it allows you and opens you up to be empathetic and to be sympathetic when another human being is going through something that is not right. So this is what this journalist, Mr. Chido Onuma, was trying to express by wearing this T-shirt, that we are all Biafrans. And so of course, the Department of State Services did not love this T-shirt. So they queried him for 5 hours. Can you believe, are you serious? 5 good hours. You just traveled from abroad, you're tired, then you're locked up at the airport for 5 hours being queried over a mere T-shirt. He did not say, now, because we are all Biafrans, let's go out and fight. Now I'm inciting violence, or let's now take up arms. That is not what the T-shirt said. The T-shirt said we are all Biafrans, and in that he was just trying to send a message of that we are all humans, and we should not be blind. We should not give a blind eye to what is happening in Biafra, because if another human being is suffering somewhere, we should be able. That should cause us to feel. And so they should instead, the government should take this very, very positively and say, you know what, maybe there's something that there are better ways we can improve in the lives of Biafrans, over there in Nigeria. So they arrested this gentleman, and of course, while speaking on his ordeal, Onuma said the agency described the inscription on his T-shirt as capable of causing disaffection in the country. This is the first time the Nigerian government hearing about this, and the way that message was, inscripted on the, because I saw it. I think our production team has not been able to get the photo of a journalist, Chido Onuma, who was arrested by the Nigerian police, and the T-shirt. He was not inciting any form of violence. He was just trying to, one, create awareness, two, if somebody else is hurting, we are all hurting. I believe that was the core of his message. And so he did not say, now, okay, fine, because we are Biafrans, so now let's fight the Nigerian government, or let's go, he did not contain any form of words that would be deemed to be insightful, that would be deemed to be disrespectful, that would be deemed to be none of that. And to hold this guy for 5 hours, imagine you just traveled. The way when you travel, you're taking a plane, and sometimes for hours, I don't know where he was coming from, and then you just arrived at the airport. You just want to get home, have a shower, and maybe rest and then unpack later. And then you're held at the airport for 5 hours. Can you believe how ridiculous that is? I mean, this is ridiculous. And the Nigerian government, I think, it's just too much. And this should be stopped. And that will not, by now him arresting this journalist, of course, he's not just a journalist, but he's also a very vocal rights activist. So maybe that also could be the reason why they arrested him. But I saw the T-shirt. I did not see anything offensive with it. He was just trying to express by the words being inscribed on his T-shirt that we are all Biafrans. He was just trying to say we are all human beings, and the fact that Biafrans are suffering like this, we should all be able to feel what they're going through. We should be receptive of their pain. We should try to imagine what they're going through. And so just creating an awareness, about what is happening there. And so for him to be arrested, I think it's ridiculous. I think it was uncalled for. And I don't know if the government of Nigeria thinks by arresting such a figure or by continue detaining of some people without even a trial. Remember, that other activist that had last week, he was supposed to have been released on Wednesday, the High Court of Nigeria. What is his name? Is it Soloya or something? I can't remember his name exactly. And the government defied even its own ruling. The High Court said this guy should be released and without condition, because the government had preferred very ridiculous charges against this person, the government of Nigeria. So you see, when you continually do things like this, tell me how this is not going to cite other people now to even rise up, because when you start infringing on people's rights in that manner, you're only hardening them. And I think that is what has happened also in Ambazonian, and we will talk about that, because remember, the talks started yesterday based on an 8-point ridiculous points there by government of Paul Biya, and that he hopes that will help bring the Anglophone together, because his thinking is that Anglophones should not even be talking about seceding and should come back to Cameroon. So we'll talk about that later on, but right now I think that the government of Nigeria is just being ridiculous with this. That will not change anything. In fact, if that guy would have just passed through the airport and just went home, it would not have even made headlines. Because when you keep doing things like this, you're bringing attention, which I don't think the government even wants in the first place. Because I'm sure you just read a t-shirt and that's it. You go your way. Even if you met this person, fine, we are all Biafrans, and then you just go your way. I don't think, but by them arresting him now, they're making it news, and now they're creating even bigger awareness. And this in its essence will even cause more insight. It will incite more people. And it's ridiculous. So I think that government, Uche Fanfink, you're saying Omoyele Sowore, yes, thank you very much. Has he been released? Because I know the High Court last week had ordered for his release without any conditions, but the government has refused to release this person. How do you defy orders from your own court? Nigerian government. The lack of respect of our constitutions in Africa by our leadership is what a lot of times brings the crisis that we witness in Africa today. Because we should be able to respect the rule of law. If you are arrested as a citizen and you're taken there, they will say, we are arresting you in accordance to the law, and they will quote you some ridiculous stuff, and they say, according to this, you've broken this law and blah, blah, blah. But now this person, the court did not find him to be to have committed whatever crimes that the government had preferred against him, and ordered for his immediate release. That was last week. I think the guy is still in detention until today, and the government works with impunity, and that should be discouraged, and that should be spoken against, because for us to have independent and strong institutions, it should start by our leadership, and of course all of us respecting the law, because nobody is above the law. If the court had ordered, according to the law of the land, release this person, we did not find him with anything that warrants us to give him a sentence, and then you refuse to release him from jail. Tell me how people will not feel disenfranchised. Tell me how you will not incite people, because they'll feel, now you're continuing with the injustice. The next thing we'll do, we'll go protesting. The next thing we'll do, we'll continue fighting for our rights. So I think the Nigerian government is not making it any easier. They're causing this mayhem by themselves, by arresting this journalist at the airport. What are you doing? You're bringing the attention that you do not want this guy to bring to the world, but you're bringing it by yourself. Because by arresting him now, because of the t-shirt that he wore, we are all Biafrans, which I don't find it any offensive at all. It was not offensive. He was not insulting anybody. He was not speaking against the government. He was not insulting the president. He was not. It's just a t-shirt with a message. The way you wear a t-shirt with love, prayer, or whatever it is, that the messages sometimes you find on t-shirts. So this guy, just a t-shirt saying we are all Biafrans. And from a human point of view, he was just trying to say we should all feel the pain that Biafrans are going through, because we are all human beings. So when one part of humanity is suffering, we should all be able to feel and try to understand and try to help in whichever way possible. That is not insightful. That is the core of humanity. So for the government to have arrested him, I think is ridiculous. And for that, I think it worked against whatever it is that they were trying to, because they're saying that the T-shirt was capable of causing disaffection in the country. Now, the guy was just minding his own business, going whatever. If you would have let him just to go, if you'd have left Chido Onuma, the Nigerian journalist, to just go his way, go home, take a shower, he had come in from a long, flight from abroad, nobody would have cared. You just read the T-shirt and you go your way. But now that you arrested him, now you're bringing attention to the matter that you don't even want to receive attention. Now you're causing that all by yourself, the disaffection. That is what the police in Nigeria is causing by arresting this person with no reason at all. Because from where I stand, I saw the T-shirt. It's not offensive at all. It's not offensive at all, So that's Sunday Emeka, you're saying, Nico Chukweza, you're saying that's Nigeria for you. And Ifyenyi Chuku now Duabuchi, you're saying the zoo Nigeria must fall, so help us. Zenwe Vincent, you're saying Nigeria is a lawless country. This government is so corrupt and confused. And Jum Jr. is saying Ambazonians, happy Independence Day. Yes, indeed. And we're coming to that because 1st of October is a very important day in Ambazonia. So we are coming. And Jum Jr., thank you so much for joining us. But we are coming, and we will be talking about that very, very shortly. And John Paul, you're saying sadly Buhari's government chose the court orders. They'll obey and blame it on the national interest. I know. And not just Buhari. I think a lot of our leaders here in Africa, they apply the constitution very piecemeal when it favors them. But there's a blatant abuse of the constitution here in Africa. I call it a constitutional coup, and it is being led. The people in the forefront is a lot of our leaders. And I think it's time we spoke out, because the constitution is something that is very important to a country. Law and order maintains harmony within a country. So if a government blatantly is abusing the constitution and disrespecting the constitution, what do they expect a normal citizen to do? It's not okay. And our prayers, amen, you're saying today is Ambazonians Independence Day. Yes, indeed. I'm aware of that, and we will talk about it. Uche, thank you so much. And Sunday Emeka, you're saying God must surely punish Nizuoria. Jesus' name. What did he do? And also, yes, I think a news there. Oh, yeah, I think what I read earlier about Biafra before I went to the journalist. All right, and so this is what had happened. And forgive me, I may not be able to get the names very right. So 2 Pan-Igbo groups disagreed with the President General of Ohanaeze Ndigbo, Chief Nia Nwodo, that he's calling Biafra stillborn, that it was dead on arrival and it was defeated. And of course, Nwodo was said to have stated at the just concluded Dr. Michael Okpara Leadership and Good Governance lecture at Umuahia in Abia State that Biafra was defeated at the Civil War. But the disagreeing groups, that is the Igbo People's Congress and the Igbo Aborigines, however, argued that the war ended on a no victor, no vanquished note. So they're saying basically the Igbo side and the Nigerian government side, they got tired because the war went on for months, and so they got tired, and of course they gave up. They just wanted the war to end at that point. So this person, the President General Ohanaeze, Chief Nia Nwodo, is saying that Biafra was defeated, and so he does not understand why there are these calls for Biafra. I don't know if he lives in Nigeria or he has visited Biafra and seen what really necessitates even the calls for secession. Maybe he does not know much about Nigerian history, and maybe he does not watch the news and see what is really happening there in Biafra. Otherwise, he will be mindful on how he's making these statements. So he's saying that Biafra, that is a country that was dead on arrival, that was defeated, completely, gone. So he's saying that was a stillborn republic. So basically the birthing of the new Republic of Biafra, died before it was even born. I don't know, what are your thoughts on that this morning? This President General of Ohanaeze Ngibo, Chief Nia Nuodo, and he was speaking yesterday here in Abia State, and they were having this discussion about secession. And of course, some disagreeing groups, that is one of them, Igbo People's Congress and Igbo Aborigines, came out and said, no. It is both sides got tired. The government of Nigeria then got tired, and Biafrans also were worn out, they got tired. And so they all wanted to, just end the war. And that brought to the end of the war. But according to this guy here, he's saying that, Biafra was defeated. And so he's not understanding why there are calls for secession by people of Biafra, especially the Igbo people. And of course, he got his match there from the Igbo People's Congress there and Igbo Aborigines there. They came out and said, no, there was no victor, and there was no victor, no vanquished note, as in there was no victory and there was no loser on that war. So he cannot say that Biafra was defeated. The Republic of Biafra then was defeated. So anyway, Oche Fanfink, you're saying Nigeria is a lawless country where every evil things has been glorified. All right, and Sunday Emeka, you're not very pleased with the sentiments of this person, and you're calling him a madman, and you're saying Nwondo will die, Biafra freedom will come. I'm very sure. Okay, Nina, Nwondo's father was reportedly a saboteur against Biafra. So he has a history. His family has a history with the Biafra war. So that is where he's coming from, and that is according to Efienyi Chuku na Dwabuchi. Okay, thank you. So is that your name, or are you just being fancy because it's really long? But thank you so much for speaking with me this afternoon. It's at the top of the hour, and we thank you so much. So you're saying Nwondo is a saboteur, and Almighty God will punish Nwondo. Thank you so much. And that is Sunday Emeka there. You're saying Almighty God will punish him. And so Prosper King Igwe is saying, I hate Nigerian with passion. Okay. All right, so we thank you so much. So keep writing to me. And please, it's always a pleasure to know where you're watching us from. It's always a pleasure to know where you're watching us from across the world. I can see a lot of Biafrans are here this morning, and a lot of Ambazonians and a lot of other African nationalities across the world. And I know you watch us from across the globe. So it's always a pleasure to know where you're watching us from. But I was just going through the African news headlines this morning, and we saw there the journalist that was arrested in Algeria. He was coming from abroad. He was traveling from abroad, and he was arrested for wearing the T-shirt that says "We are all Biafrans." And so like I said, I did not find that offensive at all, because we are all Biafrans. We are all human beings. When one is suffering, we all should be able to see that. And so I don't see why he was arrested. And if at all the government is accusing him of causing, they're saying, a disaffection in the country, when they arrested him, that is exactly what they did. If they had let this guy to go his way, nobody would have cared. Nobody would have even paid attention to his T-shirt. But the fact that they arrested him, now it's making international news. We're here talking about it. And guess what? It has been able to achieve whatever. And maybe that's not what the guy had intended to. He just loved the T-shirt, and whatever the message he had on, and he did not mean any harm. But the government arresting him, now we're here talking about it. So there it is. And of course, Jubaland, there was a petition there. And the petition against the re-election of Jubaland State President Sheikh Ahmed Islam Madobe has hit a snag due to the absence of a judicial system. So somebody was there, challenging the election of President of Jubaland, Mr. Sheikh Ahmed, because the petitioner was Mr. Abdallah Ahmed Ibrahim, who was barred from contesting for president and now is considering moving to the East African Court of Justice. And of course, he told the East African African newspaper that he submitted his petition to the regional court because courts in Somalia lack the capacity to handle that case. So there you go. That is from Somalia. And so, keep writing. I see you don't agree with that person at all. Chido, I know you don't agree with Nkibo. Is his name? I can't even say it right. Ohanaeza. Chief Nia Nwodo. His name is Nwodo. Chief Nia Nwodo there from Biafra, who said from Nigeria there, who said that Biafra was a stillborn republic. Please let me know your thoughts on that. And of course, the arrest of Nigerian journalist and rights activist Mr. Chido Onoma. Let me know your thoughts on that. And we will have our topical discussion just in a short while, and we will be looking at the national dialogue that Mr. Paul Biya has called on in Cameroon in regards to solving the Ambazonian crisis. Will it be able to solve the crisis at all? We will talk about it. And all right, so let's talk about South Africa and a team of special envoys from South Africa who were sent across the continent following recent xenophobic attacks has presented President Cyril Ramaphosa with a preliminary report. Remember, after the xenophobic attacks that happened in South Africa, President Ramaphosa, some countries came out and they're very angry. That would include Algeria, Ghana, Senegal, Tanzania, DRC and Zambia. And so he sent some envoys in these countries and to try and talk to these governments that were very angered over their nationalities being attacked in South Africa. And so they presented President Ramaphosa with the report on what these other countries said about what happened in South Africa. So let's see if that public relations or damage control move there by the Cyril Ramaphosa government will work, and if it will pacify a country like Nigeria that was really upset because a lot of people who were affected there came from there, and indeed other African countries. And there was an attack yesterday, early today actually, at a military base outside Somalia's capital Mogadishu. And, the United States praised the army for acting swiftly to repel it. Now, the base is used by American forces to train Somali soldiers, and the Al-Qaeda-linked militant group Al-Shabaab claimed responsibility for the early morning attack. So we see that Al-Shabaab continues to be a threat to the region, and the United States have been very instrumental in terms of even a lot of killings of some key Al-Shabaab leaders there in Mogadishu. And so yesterday, Al-Shabaab made an attack on a U.S. military base that is used by the U.S. to train Somali armies, and that really dented, even the security arrangement around that place, and that I think the U.S. might want to, adjust in terms of its security around that place. And of course, the Al-Qaeda-linked group claimed responsibility of the early morning attack, and the Somali army says it killed all Al-Shabaab fighters who attacked the military base there. So there we are. So we have, let's look at, we will be looking at a bit of the Uhuru legacy. Of course, we'll just look at the BBI. I don't want to get too much into the politicking, but we'll just look at the BBI. I think we looked at it from the start, but we'll just look at it shortly, and then we'll go to our topical discussion, which is the national dialogue that is happening in Cameroon from yesterday. Will it help end the crisis in Ambazonia, and what Ambazonians have to say about it out there? Will it be addressing some of the key things that you feel is a key problem? And of course, I know the problems for Ambazonians, all you want is to secede, but that is not part of the talks today. So which way, Ambazonia? So we will look at that, and we'll talk about that very shortly. Now, in Uganda, authorities in Uganda announced on Monday that the red beret and tunic would henceforth be designated as official military clothing, essentially banning the uniform of opposition leader Bobi Wine and his supporters. Now, the pop star turned leading opposition figure who has announced he is running for president against longtime President Yoweri Museveni in 2021 has made the red beret his signature, calling it a symbol of resistance. So the Ugandan government has decided that the uniform and of course the choice of color for the people's, what is it called, the people power movement that is led by opposition figure Mr. Bobi Wine. That is he's a musician, so that is his artistic name, but his real name is Robert Changulanyi. So he's been using red as his choice of color, and he's very synonymous with the red beret and, of course, his uniform. So now the authorities in Uganda have decided that will no longer happen because this red has been declared officially a uniform of the Ugandan Defense Forces, that is the army of Uganda. So Mr. Bobi Wine, I don't know if he'll be forced to adopt another color or he'll have to drop the red. I don't know what will happen because they've said that red beret, he should not be wearing it. I don't know if he can retain the rest of the color red as his, as his choice color. But the government has come out and said, no, he cannot wear, or his, supporters cannot wear the red beret there. And that has been his symbol of resistance since it has been that, like, when you see the red beret, the first thing that comes in mind is Bobi Wine. And we saw even when he came here in Kenya. So the government has banned any civilian from wearing the red beret because now it has been officially made the part of the uniform of the Ugandan Defense Forces. I don't know about this, but of course the presidential elections are coming up in Uganda in 2021, and Mr. Changulanyi, of course, has made his ambition known, and he wants to run for the country's presidency on next year's election. And this has not augured well with the sitting president, Mr. Yoweri Museveni. So by him banning this red beret, the Ugandan authorities, of course, the first thing people will think of course, this is targeting Bobi Wine, who has become, whose sort of sentiments and ideology has become very. He seems to be speaking, especially for the younger generation in Uganda there. But this move, I don't know if it will work in... of course, he will not use it. That is Uganda. If the government says you're not going to use the red, you're not going to use the red. Democracy there is continually under trial. It's not like here you can go to court and challenge and whatever. So, of course, we expect that it will not be used when the government has declared that is part of the Ugandan Defense Forces. You cannot wear the red beret. I think that's it. I don't think he will have another choice. But I don't know. He's not. He's out of the country. He's not made an official statement on that. So we will let you know what Mr. Bobi Wine thinks on that. And John Clark, thank you. I can see here you're saying that is Doctor's color red. So Museveni needs to talk with Doctor. Then Bobi Wine, yes, and Doctor is not here today. He's busy with other things. But I'm sure he's watching and he's wondering what's happening now. Even him, he'll have a problem where, but his party did not have the beret. I think it's the red beret that the government does not want Mr. Bobi Wine to be using. That has become a signature look for him and his supporters. So perhaps they can continue keeping the color red. But they've said also the tunic, the beret and the tunic would henceforth be designated as official military clothing. Are you serious? So basically, it's not red. So Mr. Bobi Wine and his party, People Power, might want to go and by the way, the party has not been, the People Power movement has not been officially registered. So it is not a registered party. It is a movement. So I don't know if he will register it, and when he goes to register it, will it be accepted by the government, or it will be also chaotic there? Uganda. All right. Thank you so much. And Buta, I heard a role you're saying is color yellow also banned in Uganda. With my red eyes, I'm also banned from visiting Ugandan friends. Not quite, because Museveni's national resistance movement, I think official color is yellow. You always see him on yellow. And there was some by-elections that happened in Uganda last week that NRM led, scooped all those seats. So it appears NRM still has a stronghold there in Uganda. So I don't know, but there it is for Mr. Bobby Wine. He'll not be wearing the color red. I think we'd looked at this topic, but I'm told all right, so let's just go quickly on the just the BBI, and then we can look at our topic of the day. That is from Ambazonian. I have so much that I would like for us to discuss this morning, so please stay tuned. We look at the national dialogue that started yesterday there in Cameroon. Will it solve the Ambazonian crisis there? And I just have a small history there on what has been happening and what has brought the Cameroon government and, of course, the Anglophone region to where it is today, and the standstill and the headlining positions. And we'll look at it even chronologically and see where we are today, what really has been happening.
Peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
Welcome back and good afternoon, and I have to apologize for that. We had a bit of a technical hitch there, so we are back because our time was not up yet, and so we have to start a new link. So in case you're waiting for us in the other link that we'd started and you're wondering what's going on, well, we had a bit of a technical hitch there, and we apologize for that, but we are back with our conversation today. And of course, before we went to the break, I wanted us to look at the BBI, as I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the show. I think I already looked at this, but I'll just take us through very, very quickly, and then we look at our topical discussion, and that is the national dialogue in Ambazonian, in Cameroon, that is started to happen from yesterday. Will it solve the Ambazonian crisis? Please let me know your thoughts on that. And we look at the Standard News Morning. You look at the Standard this morning, and it says that will BBI deliver Uhuru and Raila handshake deal? And we go to page 7. We had done this before, but let me just take us through it quickly, and then we look at other things on page 7. And it says that the Building Bridges Initiative team yesterday went on a retreat to prepare a report that it will present to President Uhuru Kenyatta. The team constituted after the March 9th, 2018 handshake between President Uhuru Kenyatta and opposition chief Raila Odinga has promised recommendations that will foster unity. Already leading politicians are divided on a proposal that the team should recommend a referendum as a cure for all the country's social woes, a negative ethnicity, political antagonism, corruption, among others. Now, speaking at his current offices yesterday, Wiper Party leader Mr. Kalonzo Musyoka said the recommendations must be directed towards unifying the country first. And in a quote, it says, people must be able to interrogate those recommendations and see how unifying they are, said Mr. Musyoka, adding that we need to create a country free of corruption and other ills. And Aden Duale, the majority leader in the National Assembly, said he expected the BBI team to propose a system where minority communities were not left out of government, which I think is very important. And devolution came to really solve some of these problems, because there are communities in this country that had been marginalized for many years with the regimes before, and so we see that devolution in Kenya was very important and very timely and very vital, so that it ensured that when it comes to development, all areas in the country were received their the national cake in terms of development. And of course this has give birth to a lot of corruption in the counties today. As you see, a lot of governors have been, we see the reports coming from the Auditor General. They are being mismanaging the funds in the counties, and so it just beats the core of devolution. And that was really to make sure that the service to just the ordinary Kenyan, they could receive the government services at their doorsteps, and they didn't have to drive for a long period of time for them to go to, because we used to have like provinces, and then out of that would have like the headquarter of a province, and that would be like very far. So the 47 counties really are quite accessible to a lot of Kenyans, and initially they were called, I think, districts, and they were changed into the counties. And so we see that part of that, as Mr. Aden Duale there is saying, and I think his concern is quite legitimate, and he's saying he's making that the proposals that have been given by the BBI team will make sure that minority communities were not left out of government. And you know what, I agree with Aden Duale here 100%. But here's the thing: if really a devolution was working as we had hoped that it would be working, and it was really working in all the counties in Kenya, and at some point nobody would even care who is the president of this country, because if as a Kenyan, wherever you are, you're able to get the services you require, your health conditions have been improved, the health services have been improved, there are jobs there in the counties, or even if you want to farm, the government subsidized fertilizers and inputs are there that will help you in whatever you want to do. Like, nobody would even care. But because the corruption that has really engulfed a lot of our counties here in Kenya, that's why we still look at the national government. I think, that is where our help needs to come from as citizens. But devolution was supposed to cure that, and we are supposed to have these counties and have this the county government led by the governors to make sure that all the services that we require, regardless of where you are, all the roads that you need made inside the country, regardless of where you are, all of these services were met, and everything that we needed from the national government, it was supposed to have trickled down to the national to the county governments. But we see the great mismanagement of funds in the counties. It's really disheartening and has killed the spirit of devolution. And so Aden Duale, they are raising a very pertinent matter there, and he's saying distribution of resources must also be equitable. And yes, indeed. And we see that the BBI team was formed, of course, after the aftermath of the disputed 2017 general elections here in Kenya. And, of course, that was like a truce between President Uhuru Kenyatta and opposition leader Raila Odinga. And now the team will be presenting its finding on this month, on the 24th. So I said this is a very important month for Kenyans who are waiting eagerly. And there's no need to panic, since we have enough time to the October 24th deadline. That was Mr. Mwangi who was assuring, Kenyans, and of course, lawyer Paul Mwangi, who co-chairs the BBI, secretariat. So he came out and said, the team has enough time, and it will be able to, deliver on that promises. So, of course, the team was constituted on March 9th last year, and it was as a result of a truce between President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, and the team is supposed to table its report by October 24th, and already some leaders have expressed different expectations, with some saying it should recommend a referendum to change the system of government, and others saying a plebiscite is not necessary. necessary. So there you go. And of course, the story is in detail there on page 7 of the Standard newspaper. So we are waiting as Kenyans to see, will this BBI be able to solve and to cure a lot of, some problems that we've been experiencing here, especially related to elections that sometimes have turned out to be very, very deadly. Kenyans losing lives, others losing properties, others moving. You have to move from where you are because you don't feel safe, because you're perceived to be coming from a tribe that is not very friendly to the tribe that stays there, to the majority there. So it has been, not very good in this country. So they're trying to really solve the root cause of this problem. And so as a Kenyan, I'm actually very interested to see what this will happen. And the only change of the constitution I want the BBI to bring is a pure parliamentary system of government, and we discard a presidential system. And that is according to Aden Duale, majority leader in the National Assembly. So as I had mentioned earlier in our initial talk there are 9 key point agendas for Uhuru and Raila Pact that are contained and supposed to be addressed in the BBI, and one of them is ethnic antagonism. The second one is lack of national ethos. The third is inclusivity. Fourth is devolution, and fifth is divisive elections. 6 is security. The 7th matter is corruption, which I think is the core problem, like is the mother of all ills in this country, and shared prosperity. And number 9, responsibilities. I think these are things that are very, very near and dear to Kenyans. And so let's just see what the report says. So the team has assured us that by the 24th of October, which is the deadline, they will be able to bring us, and Kenyans will be able to know their findings. And of course, right now, as I had read there earlier also, they right now are meeting in a retreat to try and, just compile this information that they have been gathering from Kenyans since last year. Thank you so much. And again, I apologize for the hitch we had earlier. We had a good show and we had a really good engagement, but we had a bit of a technical hitch, and so we couldn't handle it at that point. But we're back now, and so let's just finish. We have another half an hour or so to go and look at the things that matter to Africa this morning. Of course, I had gone through all the news making headlines across Africa, so I don't know. I'll just go through it at the end of the show. I'll not even repeat it now because we had gone far. And hello, Tiny, you're saying I've been away for some time. Nice to see you too. Okay, Onugalu, you're saying you're watching from Germany, and thank you so much. Thank you so much. So keep talking. So now, of course, the national dialogue that President Paul Biya had called for in Cameroon started yesterday, and today is the first anniversary of the declaration of the self-described Republic of Ambazonia. Even a lot of Ambazonians here had come out and said, you know what, today is our anniversary, and October 1st, that is today, is a very important day for Ambazonians, because today is when they declared their self. They made the declaration of having a republic. That was last year. That has got that part of Ambazonia in a lot of troubles with the Cameroonian government, and you're calling it Happy Independence Day. So it is Independence Day in Cameroon today. That is the 1st of October, and you're asking you're asking who is Biya regime supposed to dialogue with. That has been my question, because the leaders of Ambazonia was slapped with a life sentence there, and so when he's having these conversations and this dialogue, who is he talking to? But apparently there are a lot of people who showed up for this, but I'm told also that a good number of some leaders from Anglophone did not really attend these conversations. So they have like 8 commissions, and in each commission they have about 50 members in the committees. So the 8 commissions are supposed to be looking at 8 different issues. I was unable to get that, but I looked at it, I think was it on Friday or Thursday here, and we talked about it, and all that list, I think what Ambazonians are looking for was not contained in that list. And so really, what you've been crying for and what you've been agitating for will not be addressed in that committee, in that meeting that is happening, in that national dialogue that is happening in Cameroon starting yesterday. Today it comes in its second day. And of course, today is October 1st, and that is the Independence Day for the Ambazonians. And this year's anniversary comes one day after the national dialogue to try and end the conflict between Ambazonia and Paul Biya's government there in Yaoundé. And, as I've mentioned, they have like 8 points. The government gave 8 points that they want the talks to center on, and secession was one of them. So I don't know if Paul Biya has been listening to Ambazonians in any way, and what he really thinks could be the solution to this problem between Anglophone and the Cameroons. And just a bit of history, and Germany, of course, was stripped of its African colony of Cameroon after its 1918 World War defeat, when the League of Nations, the forerunner to the UN, split the territory between victors Britain and France. Now, 4/5 went to Cameroon, that is the larger Francophone region in Cameroon, becoming the independent Cameroon in 1960. We are together until there, right? So just a background of where this came from for those who might be watching and you don't understand what we are talking about. Now, the British portion along the border with Nigeria became independent in 1961, and the northern Muslim majority section chose to join Nigeria, while the remaining southern area was unified with Cameroon in a federation. Now, the federation structure was scrapped in 1972, and the Anglophone portion was annexed. So until 1972, Anglophone was actually an independent autonomous territory. All right. But now in 1972, that was scrapped, and the Anglophone portion was annexed, and largely Francophone Cameroon has 10 regions, 2 of which are mainly English-speaking: Northwest region, whose capital is Bamenda, and Southwest region, which is Buea as its capital. They are home to around 14% of Cameroon's population of 23 million people there. So the Anglophones account for 14% of the 23 million people there in Cameroon. So that is a huge number of people, 14% of 23 million. That's a huge number of people there. And the 2 regions are permitted some self-governance and language rights, including bilingual schools, but many complaints of Francophone-favored discrimination in education and the justice system and the economy. That was the initial agreement when, Anglophone was forced into joining the rest of Cameroon there. And so that was the agreement. It's going to be bilingual, but as we see, the government of Paul Biya has increasingly been forcing the Anglophone region to pick French as its main language there and be taught in school, be the official language that is used to teach in schools, and also to carry out any government business or any official business there, including court sessions there in Anglophone. And Anglophones have not been they've not been receiving this very, very well, because they don't understand French, in any way. And so that agreement that they had initially of having bilingual sort of school system, the government of Paul Biya went and violated one of these agreements there. And so we in 2017 we saw actually the protest was started by teachers and lawyers, and in January 2017 senior secessionist activists were arrested and charged with terrorism and rebellion. President Paul Biya halted their trials in August, apparently trying to calm the situation. That was in January 2017. Now, in October 2017, separatist leaders issued a symbolic declaration of independence. That is the Ambazonians. So in October, that is why today is a very important day. I think it was the 1st of October they issued a declaration of independence. At least 17 people were killed in clashes on the sidelines. Last year is when and in December 2018, Biya ordered the release of 289 people arrested in connection with the crisis. But also we know that a lot of they just released the normal citizens, but the leaders of Ambazonians were still held in the jails there in Yaoundé and across Cameroon. And so far, more than 2,000 people have been killed in violence between Ambazonian security forces in the Anglophone region since October 2017. And Human Rights Watch says around 530,000 people have fled their homes, according to the United Nations report. That is over 500,000 people. And these are not just statistics. These are people who have fled their homes. And of course, we've been coming here with news every day of even the villages there in Ambazonia being burnt down by government forces. So it has not been very easy there for Ambazonians. So around 2,000 people so far have been killed, and others are unaccounted for. And the Prime Minister, which is the head of a government, of course, Mr. Joseph Ngute, was the one who was leading these talks yesterday, and he urged Cameroonians to write history by seeking lasting solutions to the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. And opening the major national dialogue on Monday, September 30th at the Yaoundé Conference Center, Chief Dr. Joseph Dion Ngute said that the time has come for Cameroonians to look at themselves and talk so as to come out with real solutions to their problems. So this is what the Prime Minister, who is representing the government of Paul Biya, said. He said these talks should represent the national interest and should be aimed at finding a solutions to the problem that is plaguing to the conflict that now has claimed. We've seen over 2,000 lives there, and over 500,000 people have been displaced so far. But when you look at the key points that the government gave as the talking points and as the things that he thought, the government of Paul Biya thought that were the key highlights, he wanted, the dialogues to take part on those grounds. You realize that majority of the agitation by Ambazonians and their issues have not really been captured in this dialogue. So if you're out there and you're an Ambazonian and you've been following these talks, please kindly let me know your thoughts and let me know how what you're thinking this afternoon, and if at all these talks will be able to solve the crisis in Ambazonia, and if at all this national dialogue that Paul Biya has insisted from the points that he gave. He wants it to be inclusive, so he wants to stop the secession talks, and he wants everybody to join back the government. So, of course, to join back at the larger part of Cameroon, some participants of the major national dialogue have disclosed what they expect at the end of the national event that started yesterday at the Yaoundé Conference Center under the chairmanship of course, the Prime Minister, Mr. Joseph Ngute. And they were speaking yesterday at the end of the opening ceremony of the 5-day major national. So this dialogue is supposed to take place for 5 days. So today is the second day. So by the end of the week, maybe we will know what were some of the key issues that were raised during these talks. But as I have said, none of the Anglophones, agitations have been captured in the 8-point agenda that President Paul Biya's government issued as the grounds for this national dialogue. So he did not even bother to, reach out to the Anglophone and say, okay, so what are some of your top issues that you would want addressed during the national dialogue? He did not do that. He called for the national dialogue. Because I think if you're calling for a dialogue, then you should be open-minded to hear what the other person is saying, and you should not come here with you've already pre-perceived, notions, and you're already clear on what you want to achieve. You already have, at the end of the day, you already decided this is what I want to speak about, and this is what I want to achieve from these talks. And you want to talk with the other side, but you do not care to consult and just hear from them. What is it that is important to them that they would want to be included in this dialogue? So Mr. Paul Biya's government failed to do that. Instead, gave a blatant 8-point issue agenda that he wanted to be discussed in this national dialogue, but did not capture any of the issues that we see the Ambazonians agitating for. So this national dialogue that Mr. Paul Biya called for, will it even solve the problems and the issue of the Anglophone and the crisis now that has become very serious? And according to some reports here I read, I think a couple of months ago, Cameroon, the Anglophone war is one of the most forgotten wars across the world, and a lot of humanitarian crises that the world sometimes have decided to give a blind eye to. And so that is why even Punchline Africa keeps speaking about this matter from Cameroon there. So now, if you are an Ambazonian out there and you are aware of what has been happening, and you've been following these talks and you've been following these pronouncements by the government since Paul Biya said this about 3 weeks ago, that he'll be calling for a national dialogue, do you think that Mr. Paul Biya has even the intention of finding a lasting solution? Because we see here his prime minister that is representing him on these talks, Mr. Joseph Ngute, coming out and saying that they're hoping to come out with a real solution to their problems. But how can you do that when already you came out with the points that you want discussed, and yet the people that you want engaged in these talks, you do not bother to reach out to them and see what is important to them, what do they want discussed, how do they want to go about it, what are the burning issues that they want included in these talks. Instead, you came with your own things that you wanted to be discussed. So the other person is coming in, and the ground is not very equal, and is not very conducive in terms of really having an open dialogue that can actually bring solution to the problem that has claimed so many lives there in the Anglophone region. So Efong people, you're saying the marginalization is very strong. The Northwest and Southwest governors are appointed by the regime to represent the people. The French Cameroon government has failed even before the start of the dialogue. So that is what I was even talking about, because marginalization, and that has been the key point that the Anglophones have been talking about. They're saying we've been marginalized, both economically, developmental-wise, infrastructure-wise. There has been marginalization in all fronts when it comes to Anglophone compared to the rest of Cameroon. But you see, this is something that is quite very important for the Anglophone, but it has not been captured as even a talking point in the dialogue, And the Dadut, you're saying Paul Biya military killed a pregnant woman yesterday with the so-called dialogue was ongoing. So anyway, Mr. Paul Biya's Joom Jr., you're saying the Francophones cannot resolve the problem of Anglophones without the major actors present on the table. It is a sham and will yield no positive results. And I have said that, I can't even tell you how many times, because the key leaders of the Anglophone are being held in jail. They're serving a life sentence, and I think as I was continuing to read here, let me just finish up this, and maybe we can understand what is really happening now. And some participants of the major dialogue have disclosed that, of course, they expect the national event to kickstart, and they have expressed displeasure in the manner in which the dialogue is happening, and a lot of Anglophones have really said that they are not very confident that this dialogue will solve their problem, and their problem is Cameroon, and they want to secede. And of course, Mr. Biya will not have that as the key talking point, or during these national dialogues there that he called over 3 weeks ago. Now, of course, prominent among them is Tacham Chirac. I don't know if you know this person, an ex-Ambazonian fighter who sees the event as a great initiative that will help reconcile English and French-speaking Cameroonians. Hey, people from Anglophone, do you know this person, Tacham Chirac? And he's saying, actually, this is a very good opportunity. He's one of the few people there that he's a former ex-Ambazonian fighter. And he's saying that he's okay with what is happening there. And let me just see. So, however, in August 2019, leader Julius Ayuk Tabe and 9 others were sentenced to life in prison for charges including terrorism and secession, and those were the leaders of Ambazonia. And I was just saying, before even the start of this national dialogue that is today on its second day, the government perhaps would have released the leaders of Ambazonia who have been, serving now a life sentence, and the manner in which even the ruling went, and the manner in which even the case was conducted is completely against any normal, judicial process in the world. And so when Paul Biya is calling for this dialogue, and he's sitting there talking to people who might not even have an impact to the Ambazonians, who might not even be representing the aspirations and the dreams and, what the Ambazonians want, is the ones he's having on the table. and the people that Ambazonians are trusting that is going to advance their ideals and is going to advance their whatever they want to be addressed in that dialogue are not part of that because they're somewhere languishing in jail. So how is this even going to work? Will the Ambazonians be open to this? Was it even done in goodwill? Is Mr. Paul Biya's government even serious about these talks? Because if it were, then the first thing the government would have done is the release of the Ambazonian leaders who were serving a lifetime for very fictitious charges there. They were charged with terrorism and secession. And as I was reading there, the history of, Ambazonia, and and the Cameroon and how they got here, and so it's very interesting. Ambazonians are 14% of Cameroon's population of 33 million people, so that is a huge number of people that you cannot just ignore. Of course, the bishop of ecclesiastical province of Bamenda have tabled 4 major proposals to the Prime Minister. These are the bishop from the Anglophone-speaking region and head of government chief Joseph Ngute for a successful dialogue to take place. Initially, they'd written this letter on 27th of last month of September. The bishops they call themselves ecclesiastical province from the ecclesiastical province. The bishops of the ecclesiastical they'd written a letter to the government, and they said for this dialogue to successfully take place. So this is our 4-point talking agenda, and this letter was written on the 27th of September 2019, just a few days before the dialogue actually started yesterday. And in a letter signed by Bishop George Nkor, president of PABEC, the bishops tabled their proposals in 2 headings, and namely the prerequisites for dialogue. So this is what they wanted: participants in the dialogue, methods of representation, and the content of the dialogue. So in their key 4-point agenda, they wanted to know their prerequisite. They mentioned the prerequisite of the dialogue, and one of them was, can you please release the leaders of Anglophone, just to make sure, as a show of good faith, and also participants in the dialogue, the people who the government has picked, to go represent and speak on behalf of the Anglophone people are not really considered very legitimate. And they're not considered as people who are representing, the plights of the Anglophones, who are representing the dreams and the aspirations of Anglophones. So these bishops, in their 4-point, pre-talks, said, number 1, the prerequisite of the dialogue, which is, number 1, first of all, release those leaders of Anglophone. Number 2, the participants of the dialogue, surely. Who are these people that you're bringing to the table to want to come and talk on behalf of Anglophones when they really, others are really completely out of touch with what is happening in Anglophone, and they do not completely represent the people of Anglophone? And also method of representation also that is included there, and the content of the dialogue. So these are the things that the bishop wanted to talk to the government about before the talk started yesterday. I don't know if the government of Paul Biya listened, because the talk started yesterday anyways. And of course, concerning the prerequisites of the dialogue, the bishops called for the respect of truth, sincerity, honesty, and frankness in the 1961 agreement that established the federal character of the state. I don't know if President Paul Biya is going to even care about this. Respect of the truth, sincerity, and honesty and frankness in the 1961 agreement that established the federal character of the state, that allowed, that Anglophone is an autonomous region on itself, So now these bishops are saying, for us to really have a successful dialogue, which already has started, then the government of Paul Biya must respect the truth, the sincerity, the honesty, and frankness in the 1961 agreement that established the federal character of the state. If this is respected, then dialogue should address the form of the state, the administrative system, the legal system, and the education system, the bishop said. So this is the church that is quite vocal there and has been very vocal, speaking against the government of Paul Biya. I think they're the only people who sort of have been immune. But the other day, I think Paul Biya's government also came out and said, you know what, even as they speak, they should be careful in what they're saying and not look like they're inciting the people there. But the church has been vocal in its speaking against what has been happening in Ambazonia. And Efong people, you're saying all the people of Ambazonia should be free, and the international communities to solve the problem from the root causes. And Oben Moses Obi, you're saying Biya sees himself as a king and think he can't sit at the table with Ambazonians. Yes, and that is why he sent his Prime Minister, Mr. Joseph Ngute. And I was just thinking, this is a very important dialogue. At least on the opening day, which was yesterday, the president should have shown up there by, in person. It should have meant something, even for the Ambazonian community, because he's the one who called for this national dialogue. I think that he would have shown at least he should show up there, but he's left his prime minister to lead these talks there. So before the prime minister's speech, 20 young Anglophone former fighters dressed in the colors of the Cameroonian flag went on stage to highlight the marginalization of English speakers on their own land. So these young people, the young Anglophone former fighters, I think they stopped fighting and they showed up to the meeting, very young men. And so they wore the Cameroon's national flag, and when they went on stage, they went before the Prime Minister actually spoke, and they highlighted the marginalization. That is the core of the reason why Anglophones want to secede from Cameroon, because they have been marginalized in all spheres of their daily functioning as a people there in Cameroon. So they went there and, they highlighted how this marginalization takes place there in Ambazonia, and the separatists and the young leaders presented by the government presented the government as most open to dialogue. So they're saying they're open to dialogue. So let's just see what that dialogue will boast. Of course, today the dialogue is on its second day there in Cameroon, and I'm just wondering, based on what we know so far and based on the fact that a lot of Ambazonian leaders are still serving a life sentence, and the leaders that Ambazonians would have trusted to be part of this dialogue are not really there. Will this dialogue even bear any fruit? And as I was reading the news earlier, let me just look for that news item. So key leaders of the Anglophone movement in Cameroon boycotted the first day of national dialogue that government hopes will resolve the decades-old conflict in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. Now, nearly 3,000 people have been killed, of course, and millions have fled their homes. So we see that key leaders did not attend this meeting. So who is Mr. Paul Biya and his government having conversations with, hoping to find a lasting solution to the crisis in Anglophone? Who are they talking to then? If the key leaders snapped the meeting, they did not show up for the meeting yesterday, for the dialogue yesterday, because as I have been reading there, the bishops, the preconditions that they gave and the prerequisite for a successful, dialogue, I don't think any of this was met for even the dialogue to have started yesterday. So keep talking to us. I think my time is really up. We'd started earlier, but we had a problem with our connection, a bit of technical hitch, and so the first link stopped. So I had to come here and talk about this because I promised that we will talk about this matter. So I want to thank you so much for your understanding and for your support. And due to you saying Biya is a corpse, he can't make it there. He needs serious medical attention for about 6 months before he can attend such. Come on, but I think that he would have, I don't know, by wheelchair, by what, he would have made it. He would have gone there in person, even just for a few minutes, be there and then leave. You cannot call for a national dialogue and you're not even present as a country, as a leader. He should have showed there in person, at the start of this dialogue, and then left a few hours later or a few minutes later if his health is that bad. And so Jum Jr., you're saying clearly it's a monologue. Yeah, because if the key leaders of Anglophones movement did not show up at this dialogue yesterday, so I don't know who is this government talking to? What is the solutions they're hoping to find? Marginalization, we're seeing, is the key factor, the key driving force of Anglophones wanting to have their own country. Marginalization was not captured in the 8-point agenda that Paul Biya had that will be comprising the talks from yesterday. I think that is why maybe the Anglophones did not bother to show up on this, because they're thinking, why should we show up on something that has already pre-decided? They already come there with a they already have an end in their mind. So it's that's where we are. So it's quite unfortunate, but I'll be following these talks and of course updating you in what is really happening there. But I want to thank you so much for your company this afternoon. Thank you so much for being with us, and there will be a show, I think, later on in the evening with Dr. Matsanga, who was a bit busy taking care of some businesses. And so I'll be here in the evening with another show, and I hope that you can tune in then. But for me, right now, Miriam Goto, I want to thank you so much, and I'll see you tomorrow for another edition of Good Morning Africa show. Bye-bye for now.